when I'm having these conversations with people, their only main response that they can give me, and once you start to challenge their perspective and how they're supposed to be seeing, quote unquote, a war, when you ask them how many people were killed on October 7th, about 1,200 people. How many people have been killed throughout this year about to overlap? How many people have been killed in Gaza, in the West Bank, within that year? You can't compare the two. So one thing that I think we have to make sure that we're doing when we're conducting ourselves like I'm doing myself when we're making content or having conversations with people or having these interviews in regards to Israel and the Palestinian people. And when you're having these conversations, despite how you might feel about either or people, if you are disingenuous and you're trying to frame the entire conflict as a one-sided type of situation, then one, you're going to be misleading people, especially if you have way more, pull than I got. You can easily give the wrong impression to people who are looking for you for at least some sort of analysis or overview of the situation. So when you're in those type of positions, you have to be careful. Now, if you're just someone who just doesn't care, then what I'm saying doesn't apply. But one thing that we have to admit, and if you're watching this and you can disagree with everything that I've ever said regarding politics since day one, but you can't tell me. Let's go ahead and read some numbers here. And I'm reading from information that I got for today's numbers. So don't be in my comment section talking about, oh, I'm crazy because I got this and this and this. This is just the information that I have provided for me. From the number of people killed in Gaza as of today, the 18th of October, over 42,000 people. And out of that 42,000 people, 16,765 were children, with more than 10,000 people missing. Now, of course, those numbers could be higher. It might be higher, in my opinion, but that's just the numbers I have now. In the occupied West Bank, we have 757 people killed, and 165 of those people were children. When it comes to people injured, almost 10,000 people injured in Gaza, and in the West Bank, we have over 6,000 people injured. Now, you tell me, being honest, after hearing those numbers, is that a fair response from Israel? So one thing that we have to be careful of, and I know some people don't care about international law, people don't really care about laws in general, but we need to have system in places, restrictions, standards of some sort, because without those, that's where chaos starts to happen. If you don't have any sort of boundaries for nations across the world, crazy things is going to happen. So if you agree with it or not, we need to make sure we can hold these countries responsible, so that doesn't hint to other countries they can wild out and do what they want to, because then we're going to live in a place in a world that we don't want to be in. So one of my issues when it comes to what Israel is doing to the Palestinian people is collective punishment. If you don't know what that means, hey, don't worry, I got you. Let's read this. Collective punishment is a war crime that occurs when a group of people is punished for the actions of a few individuals or even a single individual within that group. So say what you want about Hamas. You can say that they're a terrorist group. You can say that they are the Palestinian governments in any way, shape, or form. That's not the argument. The argument is you're trying to chase down, kill, just eradicate Hamas, but killing 43,000 people, injuring hundreds of thousands of people is not okay by any means of the imagination. Not okay. So let's go ahead and watch. I hope I'm not butchering his name. Ta-Nehisi. Mr. Coates. We're gonna call him Mr. Coates, and he is doing a interview with. Oops, sorry about that. With Kellen, from the New York Times, and what we just talked about, it is the most awkward conversation that Mr. Coates finds himself in, and I love the way that he stopped the conversation to dig deeper on what the misinformation was. So let's go ahead, give this a switch here.
When you are covering this as an American, and I've said this on the show before, I worry that we have just enough access to really get this wrong. Because, I mean, tons of Israelis speak English, enough Palestinians do, but the ones who do on both sides tend to be much more secular, much more educated. I think compared to most outlets, I've had a fairly wide range of opinion on Israel on the show, and I've had everyone from right-wing Israeli commentators to actual Hamas apologists. And still I believe that maybe with one exception of people I've had on, that if you got all the people I've had on in a room, they would solve it. And that's because it's not really representative.
Ezra, why is one group right-wing advocates, or what you just said, and the other group Hamas apologists?
What do you mean?
Like, why are they not right-wing apologists?
They're right-wing apologists.
Yeah, that's just not what you just said. Like, you called the Hamas folks, and I'm not saying they're not apologists.
Compared to when I say I've had right-wing Israelis on, I mean people who support Netanyahu, not people who support Ben Gvir and Smotrich. I do not Hamas is a complicated organization. Right. I've tried to treat it on the show as a complicated organization.
Right. I know you have.
It did spend many, many years specifically targeting killing civilians. I take that as different.
You take that different than Netanyahu?
I take that as different than Netanyahu, yeah. Certainly the military wing there. Do you not? Like, what did you think of October 7th?
So let's go ahead and break that down like a fraction here. So if you think that Benjamin Netanyahu isn't killing innocent people, just how he's framing Hamas purposely killing innocent people, if you think those are two different things, we live in two different worlds. You know what I'm saying? Because like I said, almost 43,000 people have died. Almost 100,000 people injured. It's the reason why I'm saying these numbers. Unless you're telling me out of those 43,000 people that have died, 43,000 of those people are Hamas soldiers. Hamas, like actual, I want to kill every Jew type of Hamas person. If you're saying that, then yeah, I guess this conversation is not for you because you feel that the Israeli government is doing what they're supposed to, and that's to get rid of, the terrorists, So, but if not, how do you justify killing 43,000 people and injuring 10,000 people as not doing anything as extravagant like Hamas has done? in the way that he's asking, well, how do you feel about October 7th? What do you think he's going to say? Oh, I mean, it wasn't too bad. I mean, it was just like, not the worst day for Jewish people. Like, what do you think his answer is going to be? Like that question always just like throws me off. Like they're going to find someone who's going to answer that in the most unhinged, unhuman type of answer. No, that's I mean, you might get that from someone who's been living under a rock, but you're not going to get that from Mr. Coates. I mean, so to me, that was just a weird question, but let's continue.
Oh, I thought it was horrific.
Of course.
It was absolutely horrific. I mean, one of the things I just said in the earlier question was I've spent a long time sort of grappling with the idea of nonviolence. And the other part of that is the place of violence in struggles that I sympathize with, that I associate with. And I've, pretty much come out of it, feeling like the violence is corrupting. And it's corrupting amongst, even the folks who, declare their aims. That the first thing that you end up doing is folks end up killing each other. There just is no part of my politics at this point in my life that allows me to see 1,000 people massacred and say, I don't know, whatever the excuses are. I don't have that. And I'm not saying that, like, I really want to drill down on this. I feel like if you lose sight of the value of individual human life, you have lost something. Mm-hmm. Now, that might be a little naive, right? Because people have to rule states and they have to go to war and they have to do, people make these calculations besides Hamas. But as a writer, as a thing, I think you've lost something. Mm-hmm. I think that's my belief. And I'm not Palestinian. I'm not here speaking for Palestinians. I'm here speaking for Ta-Nehisi Coates and his politics. Those are my politics. So I was horrified.
One of the reasons I ask about this side of the politics is, to me, one of the ways I understand what is both true and, to me, impossible there is I understand the right of both societies in symbiotic relationship to each other. I think it's Smotrich, the finance minister, who said once that the Palestinian Authority is a liability and Hamas is an asset. Mm. And Hamas has, I think, repeatedly done things to make the Israeli right more powerful, right? I mean,
I just can't accept that.
Tell me why.
I don't know, man. When you start like dropping bombs, when you wipe out 2% of the population of people that are caged in, I don't care what their leadership did. This actually goes back to the October 7th question. Because, like, you have lost sight completely of individual life. And I guess I actually don't know how you're different. I was actually sitting here thinking about it because I want to take what you're saying seriously. And maybe, a week from now, I will, have some other answer. But as I'm sitting here right now, I don't care if you have the bureaucracy of government, I don't know, the appearance of democracy, army, whatever. First of all, people like Ben-Gvir are in your cabinet. You can't, act like they sit over here and you're not with them. And you can countenance wiping out that many people with such impunity.
And to elaborate on that, you can't pretend like this is supposed to be normal. When I'm having these conversations with people, their only main response that they can give me, and once you start to challenge their perspective and how they're supposed to be seeing, quote unquote, a war, when you ask them how many people were killed on October 7th, about 1,200 people. How many people have been killed throughout this year? About to overlap, how many people have been killed in Gaza, in the West Bank, within that year? You can't compare the two. And then addition of that, there's people, including Benjamin, some of the most crazy rhetoric I have heard that singles out a group of people, and he's in a position of power to do something about it. Not including his other cabinet members who have the same sentiment as he does against Palestinian people. So when you see these numbers in the pictures of just areas flattened, you have to take all that into consideration and say, are they doing this strategically and just trying to get rid of Hamas, like they say? Or are they taking advantage of the situation to kill as many Palestinian people as possible? And to me, since I've been doing my research, doing some reading, trying to figure out, the main players in this conflict today, it just really feels 97%, 97.25%, it's the latter. It feels like the Israeli government and those who support that government are in the camp of kill as many Palestinian people as possible for little to no reason. That's it. It's not complicated. So there's no way to justify that many murders. You can't do it. I don't care what math degree in college that you have obtained, you can't make that math correctly. You just can't do it.
I also have a lot of trouble here because I think Hamas knew what it was about to do to its own people. I mean,
I won't accept that.
You don't think they did?
If your formulation, they knew what was about to happen as a result of them doing this. Yes, but I don't want to accept that the people who are dropping the bombs had to drop the bombs. And when I hear the formulation, what they were about to do to their own people, I just feel like it removes somebody and the power of somebody to do something different.
I don't disagree with that.
And so I guess I'm disagreeing with the formulation of it. That's what I'm saying.
And I think that's a good place right there, because then they kind of start getting into other aspects of the conversation. And if you want to watch it, go ahead, go to that channel, hear the entire hour 20 minutes conversation, because it is, I don't want to say enlightening, but it is once again another perspective of someone. I don't want to say he's trying to justify the Israeli government for what they're doing, but he feels like that's what we have to accept. And if you're being honest with yourself and being honest in a conversation, that's the only way you can come up with solutions. You have to be okay with truth. And the truth isn't complicated. It's just lengthy. It's a lengthy history. It's not complicated. And if you're okay with the actual factual truth of everything that happened before October 7th and everything that's happening after, then I guarantee 100% you're not going to be okay with what has been happening to these innocent people. One thing I want to leave with you guys, and I'm pretty sure those who are familiar with America and slavery in the Jim Crow era, the civil rights movement, you know who Malcolm X is, and this quote will never go out of its time frame. Okay, this was 1965 in his autobiography. this could be said today, and you would never think that this was something that was coined, 40, 50 years ago. He said, if you are not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. Just think about that. Like what conversations, what information, what statistics has to be skewed, has to be purposely manipulated to have human beings hating those who are being oppressed and loving the ones who are doing the oppressing. Like, we all love a good Marvel movie, a good DC movie, and for the most part we're cheering for the superheroes because we know inside that's kind of how we all want to see ourselves, as someone who's always going to stand up for those who need people to stand up for them. We always feel like we need to be the voice for those who don't have a voice. I think that's like built in every human being to some extent. But ask yourself, what information are you accumulating? What information are you devouring to have you cheering for the bad guys and saying it's okay if these people are killing thousands of thousands of thousands of thousands of innocent people? Hamas was elected into power, early 2000s? How long ago was that? 20 years? 21 years? Most of the people who were in Gaza weren't even alive during that election. But you're telling me they deserve to die for something that they had no involvement in putting into power? I don't know. It's this kind of conversation requires honest people and not just people who are sitting in their feelings and just want to be one-sided when it comes to this conversation. So once again, if you guys want to have that conversation, join the Discord down below. I have an open door policy. We can have a one-on-one or a group discussion about this topic, or let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And like always, let's have that conversation.